Hi, I'm Eric Grode, Director of the Goldring Arts Journalism and Communications program at Newhouse here at Syracuse University, and I'm also a longtime lover of SU Art Museum's permanent collection. I wanted to talk a bit about the museum's holdings of the photographer Philippe Halsman, which includes nearly 1,500 photos. As someone who's spent his career writing about theater, I've long appreciated the Broadway photos Halsman took for Life magazine between 1942 and when the magazine stopped publication 30 years later. He shot a total of 101 Life covers during that time, more than any other photographer, and it bears mentioning that for much of that time, the Broadway stage was far more at the center of American culture than it is today. This was an era when cast recordings like West Side Story and My Fair Lady would make it to number one on the pop charts, and Halsman was often tasked with capturing that energy on the pages and covers of Life. So it was a real treat for me to dive into the SU collection and share with you a few favorite images. I decided to start here with a backstage shot from the 1961 musical Carnival, which was a gentler, smaller scale musical by Broadway's standards at the time, about a young French orphan who falls in with the ragtag Cirque de Paris. It's telling that the show was originally known as Carnival, with an exclamation mark, only to shed the exclamation mark from its title midway during the run, as the director Gower Champion came to appreciate its low-key charms. Here we see Anna Maria Alberghetti, who played the orphan, getting ready to go on. Another photo of her ran on that issue's cover, along with two of her puppet co-stars. There are a lot of puppets in Carnival. But I'm partial to this shot. There's so much to appreciate in it. We actually get three different versions of Alberghetti, thanks to her two dressing room mirrors. And with its wide, no-fuss array of beauty implements, eyelashes like that don't just happen, it's a lovely reminder of the effort that goes into show business. Halsman was a member of the prestigious Magnum Photos Collective, and this particular shot struck me as being eerily similar to another photo, also from 1961, by fellow Magnum member Bert Glynn. That one is taken behind the scenes at a kabuki theater in Tokyo, and even with the second woman visible in the Alberghetti shot, both photos give a sense of the almost monastic efforts that go into this very communal art form. Now, Alberghetti won a Tony Award for Carnival, but she had an acrimonious relationship with the show's producer, David Merrick, who had acrimonious relationships with pretty much everyone in the New York theater at one time or another. His nickname was the Abominable Showman. And for all the coquettish appeal of Alberghetti, an Italian-born soprano who had been performing since the age of 6 and who introduced the song Love Makes the World Go Round in this show, there's a distinct sense of melancholy in both this picture and another one I'll get to a bit later. Halsman, a Latvian photographer who came to America during World War II, is perhaps best remembered today for an on and off collaboration with Salvador Dali that lasted 37 years. Several of those photos are in the SU collection, and his whimsical jump photos. At the very end of a typical photo shoot, he would ask the subject to jump in the air and then snap them mid-flight. Over the years, he got everyone from Dali to Groucho Marx to the Duke and Duchess of Windsor to Marilyn Monroe to Richard Nixon to do a jump photo, and I wanted to make sure to include one of his Broadway subjects. In 1959, he photographed a 12-year-old Patty Duke, who was playing Helen Keller on Broadway in The Miracle Worker, a play not exactly known for its whimsy, but compare this photo with this one. Same costume, same lighting, roughly, same distance, and Duke looks at least 5 years younger. Several exhibitions have been devoted solely to Halsman's jump photos, and I personally think they often do him and his subjects a disservice by almost never contrasting those photos with the mood he had established just minutes earlier. So this was my attempt to rectify that a little bit. Halsman also had a great eye for stillness. This who we're seeing here is Catherine Cornell, who was actually friends with the real-life Helen Keller, and who was frequently referred to as the First Lady of the theater, at a time when that designation carried real weight. Her competition included the likes of Lynn Fontanne and Sarah Bernhardt. Fontanne is also in the SU collection in the photo with her husband and frequent co-star Alfred Lunt. But here we see Cornell in 1947, when she was starring in Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. Now, this production was packed with future major performers in tiny roles. Charlton Heston, Maureen Stapleton, Tony Randall, Eli Wallach. However, her Mark Antony, her co-star, was a respected but decidedly less starry British actor named Godfrey Turrell. And I don't believe it was a coincidence that Halsman essentially chose to pair her with a bust instead, a pairing that becomes even more apparent with this other exposure from the same shoot. Here, the prop turns into more of a co-star just by shifting the lighting and pulling the viewer toward Cornell's profile, as if we needed any help on that. Unsurprisingly, just like with arts journalism today, most of Halsman's life assignments were dedicated to the buzziest performers or productions of the time, as with Patty Duke, or this delightful shot of Carol Channing, who had just made her splashy Broadway debut with Gentlemen Prefer Blondes in 1949. But given the lag time between devising the coverage in the first place and then completing the issue, let alone the actual publication, even a topical magazine like Life had to gamble a bit in terms of what people would want to know about. And some gambles paid off better than others. This is Joan Diener, and the SU collection has many shots from this kind of unbelievable photo shoot. I would argue this is maybe the most genteel of the images we have. Diener was famous for her vocal range of more than 3 octaves, which, if you know musical theater performance, that's very, very rare. And she created 2 major roles in musical theater: the sultry La Lume in Kismet and the sultry Dulcinea in Man of La Mancha, both times directed by Albert Marr, who she met on Kismet and later married. This shoot from 1962 did not accompany either of those shows, however. Rather, it was in conjunction with a piece called La Belle that, like the earlier Kismet, set new lyrics to pre-existing light classical music. This time the score was by Jacques Offenbach, who is best known for writing almost 100 operettas a century earlier. He's probably best known, actually, for one song from one of those operettas, Can Can. And here, Diener played the sultry Helen of Troy. The show never made it out of its pre-Broadway tryout in Philadelphia, however, and theater insiders have long used the word floperetta to describe this all-but-defunct genre, of which Marr and Diener are arguably the king and queen. And to the best of my knowledge, none of these photos actually ran in life, and it's possible these were more of a commissioned project by the couple themselves. Either way, they are most likely our best primary record of this long-forgotten work. SU's Halsman collection is quite deep, with everyone from Helen Hayes to Alfred Hitchcock depicted, along with dozens of Hollywood actors and even a fellow theater critic, Walter Kerr. But I wanted to come back to that 1961 Carnival shoot of Anna Maria Alberghetti. Here's another backstage shot, again with 2 mirrors at play, although this time the larger mirror is almost completely obscured. Carnival ran in the Imperial Theater, which was and still is one of the premier Broadway houses. As I record this during the COVID-19 shutdown, the jukebox musical Ain't Too Proud is waiting to reopen there. I've spent a fair amount of time interviewing people in the Imperial dressing rooms over the years, and odds are I've been in this very room. The shot is a perfect time capsule of its early 1960s milieu. Western Union telegraphs were an opening night tradition at the time, with various wits competing to see who could be drollest in the least number of words. It was kind of the Twitter of its day. And you can see dozens of those telegraphs, many with a prefab congratulations on top. That New York Post cover up in the upper left is presumably there because of the Carnival photo below the fold. I should probably explain that newspapers at the time thought a lot about what was above the fold, kind of the equator of the front page, as that's what you would see if you walked past a newsstand. But look at the main headline. 5 East Berlin cops bolt barricade. These photos ran in May 1961, 3 months before construction began on the Berlin Wall, largely because of defections like the ones described here. And just like that first photo of Alberghetti brought me back to Birkeland's Tokyo shoot, covering the same ritual at the same time more than 6,000 miles away, here we see Alberghetti, a former child prodigy who sang to American GIs after they landed in northern Italy, getting ready to sing Love Makes the World Go Round with a group of puppets, just as one chunk of Europe was literally preparing to wall itself off. That same issue of Life may have had Alberghetti on the cover, but it was the week after the Bay of Pigs fiasco in Cuba, with Cold War tensions arguably at the highest they ever had been or arguably ever would be again. And the whole scene is photographed by a Latvian Jew who had spent 2 years in an Austrian prison on what was almost certainly a trumped-up murder charge spurred by anti-Semitism, and who later needed the help of family friend Albert Einstein to get out of France after Germany invaded it. Halsman arrived in New York in 1940 with one suitcase. In that suitcase was his camera and a dozen prints. Less than 2 years later, he had his first. Thank you for watching and listening. Please be sure to sample some of the other digital presentations on the SU Art Museum holdings at this site, and we look forward to showing you the genuine articles, hopefully in the very near future. Thanks again.